Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome to the Most Excellent Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Keith, and this week my guest is a writer, an athlete, a podcaster, a man who wears many hats, a man who I'm proud to call a friend of mine, Mr. Pablo Aquino. Welcome to the podcast, Pablo.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you coming, man. So, I guess let's start out with where it all begins, man. You're a fellow New Yorker. I'm from upstate, so I guess I don't count. But I got the hat. Yeah. but when did you know that you wanted to write or that you had a gift for writing? Because I think that's really interesting. Like, when does the creative stuff start? Where did that? And was that the first creative spark that you felt was writing, or was it something else?
Interesting, because I don't know if everybody else feels this way, but I feel like it was something given to me at birth. Yeah. Like I believe very much in my faith, and I have a lot of conviction when it comes to that. And I was named Paul for a reason, I was named after the patron saint of authors, the namesake of the city I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I've been a writer since, goodness, I have books from when I was in school, like second grade, and like certain like little pictures where I'm making movies. Like I was like maybe 5 or 6, writing stuff. And it's funny to look at in your 30s and go back and look at the things I was writing. I was like, oh, you have an interesting mind there. But it was something I always had, and it was something I always wanted to pursue. And that and cooking are the things that I knew that it was only things I wanted to do as far as a vocation or a career. But writing, I used to do it in New York. I used to do it for magazines. I've written for, poems, songs, TV shows, movies, and I hope to do plenty more of that in the future. But to answer your question, I think it was birth that I knew that I was going to be a writer. So
yeah, man. Honestly, it was similar with me for music. Like, I can't remember a time when I didn't have a melody in my head, where I didn't have something going on. And I don't know if it's like this with you, because I know for everybody it's different, especially when you're writing like an actual story. But songs will just appear. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't understand even where the melody comes from or the idea comes from. They're just there.
Thin air.
Yeah.
That's the same thing for me, where it feels like I call it the inspiration highway. It's like you tap into something specific that's above you, and then once you're there, it starts going. And considering that I've written a lot of content, and a lot of that stuff was as a high 20-year-old, and just randomly talking about stuff or things that I was thinking about at the time, or very very interesting thoughts and ideas and stuff. And a lot of the times I'm like, where the heck did this come from? I don't even remember half the things that I've thought or put it down on paper and all of that.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
It's something that I think it's above us. I think it's once you pick a career, once you pick something to put those 10,000 hours in, I don't know if you've heard of that, but if you pick something like that, you can tap into this inspiration highway, and you can get all you need to be a creative.
Yeah, I mean, and to me that makes so much sense, because like there's people who can practice and study and try to do creative things and they just fail. And I'm not talking about failing like they don't get commercial success. I'm talking about they just can't do it. They can't get it out of them. And then there's people like who never studied any kind of theory and they can just do it. It just pours out. It's an interesting thing. So, go into that. Like there's a lot of like children are encouraged to be creative, obviously.
At least we hope,
So
they've been cutting after school
yeah,
programs since I was young. They've been
yeah,
cutting things like gym and stuff that are creative. Like my music class was cut at one point, and I was the kid where I played two instruments at the same time for my fifth grade graduation. And like I was always big on music, and I was always, in that way I was good. I was a horrible student. There was
right,
no, I
right,
was literally, you couldn't pay me to do something on time.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's something where I
I've
hope
always been the
kids
same
I
way too.
hope kids feel as if they can be creative because if I'm being honest, there's a subsection of the world in America, especially like even in Puerto
Yeah,
Rico where my mother's from, where my family's from, and it's like you either be a creative or be a sports star or be nothing.
yeah,
That's
yeah, man,
that's how a lot of people
definitely.
feel, I got to get
Yeah,
out of the mud and all of that, and doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have this gift, but I feel like a gift is
right.
cultivated, a gift is used, a gift is, I feel like you have to work at it. Same thing with being a boxer, and I was a boxer for a little bit, and that was something I really appreciated because I saw it for as an art form, less as a sport, less as just a brute sport that people think. You look at it and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
assume Mike Tyson is just this dumb brute, but he's really one of the smartest fighters you would ever see. You know,
Yeah, I think that if there's any sport that is art,
sure.
it's boxing. It's all about angles
Mhm.
and
Footwork.
yes, thank you. Yeah, yeah,
That was my
just yeah,
specialty
so
because I
much.
used to be a dancer, so I used to help teach people footwork the most.
Right.
That's why I
Awesome.
st-
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So what I was gonna get into with the question was, how do you go from a child who there, like I said, there's encouragement you would hope to be creative, but as you get older, people kind of tell you to get in line and go get a job and how did you go from being a child who wrote to an adult who continued to write and became published and saw that as something that you could viably do as a career.
Interestingly enough, I didn't have that much of a push when I was younger for that. I feel like what my father liked is that he wanted to give me the things he didn't have that he wanted, like being able to be a part of sports, be a part of
Mhm.
like I played soccer and baseball, and like occasionally when I got older, football. And I tried a lot of things. I had drum classes. I even took one piano class, and I was like, that's not my thing. And in that way, yes, the writing part was 100% just me.
Yeah,
Actually, interestingly enough, because I was pushed for sports, I'm Dominican, so like, and my
right.
mother's from Puerto
Baseball.
Rico, but like we play baseball and I had a very good arm, and I'm related to some very good baseball players, and it was something that, yeah, the whole get in line thing.
Yeah,
I feel like baseball was almost that, especially being from the Bronx and being able to see the Yankees excel and all of that. You dream of being Derek Jeter when you're a little kid that looks like Derek Jeter.
right. Sure, sure.
But the interestingly enough, I left college when I was maybe like 20. I think my junior year of college, and I probably still had sophomore credits at that time. But a lot of what I did in college was find out, oh, I'm not a criminal justice major.
Yeah.
I don't actually want to be a lawyer like my mom said to do so I could help our people.
Mhm.
I feel like my way of helping my people was, to make poems and songs, and I was part of the radio in college, and I used to do, dance performances and stuff like that, and I did take a lot of time into to find myself,
Yeah.
and I gave myself that motivation because Yeah, for writing, I never really wanted to be one
Huh.
because, and I'll tell you for free, I wouldn't give this to my worst enemy because it's a gift and a curse. You
Yeah.
know, it's something that I put a lot of time and effort into, but Lord knows writing is not something that you wish your kid would do.
Yeah. So, so do you remember how you went about like getting published for the first time and what that piece was? Or
Yeah, actually, I was something I really liked. I was an enthusiast of finding music that people didn't know,
okay,
or
cool.
specifically, what I used to do actually is that my thing it was that I would walk a few miles where I used to
Mhm.
live in New Jersey. I used to walk a few miles down to a record store that used to sell CDs for $1,
Right.
and I would go and randomly pick one, and I would literally trust that inspiration, and I'd be like, okay, there's not a single thing that I'm here looking for, so I'm open to everything.
Right.
It was literally like this dingy little downtown library slash CDs, and it looked like a hoarder lived there because that person had all the CDs in the world, and CDs might be archaic to people. Like
Mhm.
my 2024 car doesn't have a CD slot.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
Yeah, but I used to collect CDs, and I have a huge collection of CDs, and I would go,
Yeah.
and then I became a music critic slash food enthusiast writer, and I worked for this company in New York, and then I worked for one in LA, and I worked for one in Toronto. But specifically, it was a think piece on a specific rapper that ended
Okay.
up turning into an interview, and then that was like one of my first forays into writing and being like a columnist.
Awesome. Do you remember who you interviewed with? Who the rapper
Russ.
was? Who was it? Russ? Like RUSS?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Never heard of that guy. But
Oh no.
no, I've never heard of
Oh
him, man.
man. So this is the thing back then, right?
Yeah.
And it was about 2013 when I started.
Okay.
And I've been shouted out by a bunch like Flatbush Zombies. I did an article about them, and I did a interview with a few other people, but my first interview was Russ. And at the time he was coming out, his inspiration and his you know, his okay, what I'm looking for, his business acumen was very much like Kanye West, to where he would release a new hot song every Friday.
Okay. Cool.
And I admire him because he was both his own producer, his masterer, his writer.
Yeah.
He made the beat, he did everything, and he was really good at it. He's a very commercially very successful rapper now.
Okay.
But back then he had not done a single show, I don't think, and he just has hired his agent, and yeah, it was you should definitely check him out. And
I'm
if
going
any
to,
of
man.
y'all are music enthusiasts, he's a very good rapper. He's melodic. He has some songs where he sings as well, but
Okay.
very has some good bars, and very smart.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check him out, man.
Mhm.
So you mentioned, I mean, you've done so many things. It's hard to think about where to go next. But
A little bit.
yeah, you mentioned having like a passion for cooking, right? Did you actually attend culinary school, or is that just something that you picked up on your own, working recipes and things like that?
Interesting. I had offers for culinary, but again, like you said, I didn't feel like that was something viable as a career. Funny
Mm,
enough, I do a food truck, and I run a restaurant and a hotel. And like, yeah, it was something that I went out my way of getting. My grandfather, he's from Cuba, and he had been in restaurants his whole life. And towards the end of his life, he died from diabetes in pretty bad way, to be honest. But
geez.
the one thing he used to do a lot is cook. And he was the only man I ever seen cook until I started watching Emerald's show.
Sure.
And I used to be in the kitchen with my mother all the time, and I was always interested in food. And then my mother ended up getting sick when I was and I left college, and I wanted to take care of her. And then I also went to do my own thing with writing. And for a while, I did real estate and other things just to keep things together. But that much me wanting to give her a healthier life because I felt like, the food that we were eating wasn't good for
Sure.
her and wanting
Okay.
to eat healthy and stuff. I ended
Right.
up going into food much more, and then I was watching Food Network all the time, and then I was always looking for recipes, and I c- I can make anything you could think of as long as I
Right.
have the ingredients. I've done everything when it comes to food now. I've been the dishwasher and I've been the manager.
Yeah.
I've worked every single type of place and I love it. And I do a food truck now and I think it's the greatest job ever. And like I said, I couldn't see myself being anything but a writer or a chef.
Yeah. The strangest thing about food is like if it's made right, it makes you feel something. Like food can be a very emotional experience. Like I was at a concert and I had these tacos that were like the greatest tacos I've ever had in my life, to be completely honest. And like I got them from a food truck because I was at a concert, but they were like, I'd never had a street taco that tasted that good before.
I was gonna
And
say, I was like, it might have been the LSD.
you never know, right? But no, it made the whole concert that much better, though, was the taco. So,
I know,
yeah.
well, also you can connect food with moments in your
Yeah.
life, which is nice.
Yeah.
Same thing with
Absolutely.
music, but I think we like music and like boxing, like everything that I enjoy.
Yeah.
I think food is an art as well.
Okay. Yeah,
You
for
have to
sure.
make it look
Definitely.
good.
Absolutely. Presentation is so much a part of
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
actually really, really does matter, believe it or not. And it's a process where you put this and this amount of this and this amount of this, and you make something completely different. Like
Yeah.
I did mixology. I have my mixology degree, and the things you can do with a drink to make your taste buds thinks it's completely something else.
Yeah. For sure.
It's like a magical. It's the closest thing we're gonna do to alchemy, and I say music is the closest thing we're gonna do to divinity.
Yeah. Makes sense to me, man. Yeah, it's funny because I'm really kind of a heat 'em up kind of guy at this point. I've got so much going on and I've got my kid, so I mostly just buy frozen shit like pre prepared stuff and throw in the microwave or in the oven. But I went on this kick for a while where I was making meals. I was cooking stuff and I was plating it and I was giving it to Casey and we were eating it together and I was sending pictures to his mom because I was kind of proud of it and she thought that we were going out to a restaurant every night.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, dude, I'm making this stuff.
Where are
Like,
you getting all this money
it's
to
just,
take him out to eat all the time?
but the presentation can really make a difference. You can make something look
I
so
also think
appetizing.
it
Like,
is therapeutic and it makes you more aware of what you're eating.
yeah,
It's the
definitely.
process itself of making food is cathartic, but
Yeah,
also, I find it to be an experience. It's fun. It's fun learning.
yeah. I mean, and the thing is too, like whether it's Hooters or El Cantina or some really really upscale place that I can't get to, um, there's a whole like performance to giving people food if it's done right. You know what I mean? If it's not just someone dropping something on your table.
Definitely
And
Hooters. It's definitely about the performance.
dude, so you know what my thing about Hooters is? I'm gonna go
Mhm.
ahead and say this. To me,
Hot take.
the waitresses at Hooters are just amazing waitresses. I have never had good service like that. You know what I mean? And I would go in with my girlfriend at the time, or I mean, I guess I was still pretty good looking back then, so I can't say like as an ugly old man. But I would go in with my girlfriend at the time, and they still, you know, people think that Hooters is people who've never been to Hooters think that it's basically a strip club where they give you food, and that's not the case. They're just really, really good waitresses who wear tight clothes. I mean, that's
You know,
so
every bar and restaurant you go now, they still wear tight clothes.
right. I've never been to a bar where the bartender was wearing a muumuu. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? That's
she's
never
always
happened.
wearing some yoga pants or leggings or something like that. Low cut shirt.
Man, Hooters, Hooters is just the whatever you call it, the example that they use, about society
Is
falling
it
apart or
true
whatever.
that that they might be going under, or is it just to bring in more?
There's rumors. There's definitely rumors that they might be going out of business because people just want to. I mean, DoorDash and all that stuff is killing them. I mean,
Yeah,
people
that's
don't
true
leave the
because
house. They just, the fact that now, if you have enough money, you can literally order anything. You know.
also there's a Buffalo Wild Wings everywhere now.
Yeah, but I like the food a lot better at Hooters and the
Yeah.
service, to be completely honest. So
There's
I've
one
been
in
to,
Mall of America, and I have not been there yet.
yeah. If
So on
you
the
don't
like the
mind
very top
spice,
floor.
if you don't mind spice, Buffalo Wild Wings is fine. But literally everything on their menu is hot. They don't have a mild option at that freaking place. So
I
um,
never take the mild option to be honest, but I understand
yeah.
if
Well,
somebody
yeah.
nicely
I used to
challenged.
be, used to be big on spicy food. But now I'm too like I beat my insides up. So now I have to kind of take it easy. Unfortunately, yeah. Hey, speaking of fights, boxing, athletics.
Mhm.
Um, let's segue. You you talked about how you played what, three sports in school, um, and
Yeah.
then as an adult you took up boxing. So how did that happen? Did you just find a local gym, or where did that come in?
Interestingly enough, I'd say I kind of stumbled into it.
Yeah,
It was funny because I was just traveling in Minnesota at the time. You know, I had taken some time to not just be a writer, and I wanted to travel and figure out things that I liked. And at the time, I was really bored
yeah,
In Alexandria, Minnesota, and I was a real small town, but real nice summertime. You know, I say Chain Lakes and all that, and
yeah.
specifically, I went to this gym, the gym that I had a membership for. There were boxing classes going on, and I was like, oh, let me check out one of these, and I actually ended up becoming the instructor for it.
That's amazing.
And after a while, I started to build a rapport with the people that used to do the classes with and for, because after a while, I went from being the student to actually being the teacher. And me and the person that originally started it out, his name is Corey. He's a professional boxer out here. Shout out to him. But we ended up seeing how far we could go with it. And then it became, after a while, going from this gym to this gym and then doing stuff at this other gym. And then it ended up getting our own gym, repurposing and building from the ground up what used to be a electronics company
Okay.
building. It had double garage doors and it was really tall and super dirty inside, like abandoned
Yeah.
and for weeks straight until I think we opened up officially in November of 2018.
Okay.
So pretty much did all the footwork and cleaned things, gutted things, built an entire gym. And to be honest, I was probably an instructor before I was actually a boxer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
after that, I had respect for it because I started to see it as different
Right.
after having to teach it. You
Right.
know, things start to change. I imagine if I taught writing, I might see writing different, but having taught boxing and looked deeper than what I was told boxing was or what I thought boxing was, it
Yeah.
fascinated me, and then I just started doing it, and I've never stopped. I don't fight on stage anymore, competitively, but I do it to work out, and I think
Sure.
it's beautiful. If anybody needs a reason to get to the gym and all of that, pick up boxing. It's a very disciplined sport because you're the one you have to rely on, and you
Yeah.
have to treat it like life or death because even with headgear or without headgear, it is life or death.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna
Same with wrestling.
remember what I was gonna say earlier. Boxing is about angles and levels. That's what I was
Mhm.
gonna say. That's what I was gonna say. And
Yeah,
to
and
me,
that's what
that's
ties it
so
so good.
beautiful. Yeah.
But the funny thing is, the reason why I did the boxing was because I wanted to be closer to wrestling.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
I was actually more interested in being a wrestler than I was a boxer, and I was able to meet a lot of people in the wrestling business through boxing, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But it was something where the reason why I retired for boxing is the reason why I wouldn't wrestle. I have nerve damage from an accident in high school, and
Right.
it keeps me from doing certain things with my left arm. So I've taken more of a back seat with that, and
Yeah.
I still do it all the time, and it's wonderful, and I keep up with boxing fights and UFC fights and all of that, and I love mixed martial arts. I think it's beautiful. It's a very good discipline, and I used to teach children, and I made a big impact on their lives. At least that's what they told me, and
Awesome. Yeah.
I'll always be grateful for boxing.
Definitely. So, this is something that we talked about privately, and want me to, if you don't want to actually address it in public, we can edit it out. But if not, I think that this is something that I think is important for people to know.
Mhm.
You talked about how you have Tourette's. Um, it is not something that you can see. You know what I mean? You you control it very well. Um, and I
Thank you.
guess you're welcome. Um, like, what challenges did you face as someone who is in the public eye to an extent and has definitely done a lot of public things like boxing in front of people and interviewing people and things of that nature. How did the Tourette's affect that, and how did you manage it?
Hmm.
How did you go forward with it?
I feel perfectly fine answering that question.
Okay,
One
cool.
thing is that it's more obvious than some people think because they don't know what to look for. I
Right.
part of me thinks that, and you know this from the podcast, but I mess with my hair a lot. Part of me thinks that might be
Sure.
something. But when I was younger, it was much more prevalent. It was bad where like I was the 3-year-old, 4-year-old that was cursing up a storm and had to get kicked out of places.
Right.
Because I
Right.
just
Right.
I used to have problems in school with it a little bit where like I'd had more audible tics and things, but
Yeah.
I don't take medication for it anymore. It's something that I feel like I have to keep keep on hold a little bit, but I just don't think it's nearly as prevalent as it was when I was younger. I don't actually know why though, but it's something that
Huh.
I've been okay with considering, I used to be on the radio and I had to really teach myself not to just cuss in a moment's notice because
Right.
that's one of the things is that it's like you stick to a word or you stick to an action. Like I used to do this a lot because of it. And it was something I just couldn't stop until it was something else.
Right. Sure. Sure. Yeah. I have OCD, which I've talked about on the podcast before, and I think that we may have talked about it too. But I'll pick up little ticks, and I'll do them forever, and they will become something that they start out with something that I'm just doing, and then they become something where if I don't do it, I feel like something bad is going to happen. For a long
Yeah.
time, every
Mm.
time I went around a corner, I would smack my hip, and I was like, "This is the strangest thing in the world." But by the time I noticed that I was doing it, I couldn't stop doing it. So I can kind of relate to, like, it's not the same thing because I don't think OCD is really neurological, but it's, I can relate to how how you can have something that just you feel like you can't stop doing. You know what I mean?
Involuntary, but it's almost mandatory.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Like
odd.
not stepping on a crack or
Sure, sure.
which is funny because I don't actually think I used to do that because of the superstition. I literally just thought that the person that seen me step on the crack would go and beat up my mom.
Wow. I
Like,
used to
what
think that not stepping on cracks looked cooler. So I developed a habit of stepping in between every crack that I could find.
yes.
So yeah. So like if I came to a sidewalk and it was super split, I would try to step on every area that wasn't, that was it was split into. It's just strange how that those kinds of things develop, I
Good
guess.
practice for when there's an earthquake, though.
Absolutely. I actually have been in an earthquake. It was the weirdest thing.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I was on my computer and all of a sudden my apartment started to move by itself. And I
That's
was in
wild.
MySpace because this was like 2007, and I was like, "Was that an earthquake? Did they get earthquakes in Indiana?" And everyone on MySpace was like, "Oh, earthquake!" So it was wild.
There's
It was,
actually one in Indiana. That's
yeah,
wild.
yeah. It was in Bloomington, but Indianapolis was on the fault line of it, so it actually went from Bloomington all the way up to Indianapolis. We felt it pretty hard in Indianapolis. It cracked my ceiling. It was pretty
Oh
crazy.
wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
so I've never actually dealt with that. Even they had
yeah.
the one in New York, and I heard about it because I was here.
Right.
And when I lived in California, we hadn't had one. And then, like a month after I moved, they ended up having that really big one.
Nice, yeah. Well, not nice that it happened, but nice that you got out of there before it did. But
Yeah, I don't know how I don't know how I'd react.
yeah, it's weird.
I'd probably just fall because I wouldn't just assume that the ground would fail me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it
The
was
ground,
weird too
you've
because
been there my whole life.
there was an aftershock while I was asleep, and I woke up and I
Mhm.
was like, "This is so weird." But fortunately, as a youngster, I had experience with recreational drugs, so the world shaking around wasn't all that weird to me. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was kind of just like, "Wow, this is okay. This is interesting." But yeah.
Like, why is everything moving? I'm not on tequila right
Not
now.
anything right now. This is strange, but yeah, it was nuts, dude. As long as it's not like an 8.1, I sort of recommend earthquakes because it's an interesting experience. You know.
Isn't the average around like what, a 2 or 3 or something?
Yeah, I think that's what this was. It was like nothing, dude. It was like, and we got aftershocks. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't even like we were so far away from where it actually happened. Like Bloomington to Indianapolis is hundreds of miles. So it really,
It just sounds scary because I think about it being from New York City.
yeah. Oh
And I'm
God,
like,
yeah,
crap,
dude.
like what if I was sitting on the rooftop bar that I like
Sure.
to go and take pictures of the Statue of Liberty or that's crazy, or the Empire State Building or whatever, and then
Yeah,
it just shakes. There's no real Spider-Man to save me.
there's not. There is not. Dude, when I lived
Also,
in
I heard he
Buffalo,
lives in Queens, and that would be too far for Manhattan.
right? Oh yeah, he's not going to get there in time.
He'd have
When
to
I
take the L train. He'd probably transfer from the K,
right,
get to Brooklyn to Williamsburg, but then he has to stop to get a taco. So it's like,
yeah, because he's got to get his energy up to go rescue people. So
obviously.
yeah, when I lived in Buffalo, I used to go to a lot of rooftop bars, and I can't even imagine what it would be like if an earthquake happened because a lot of those had slanted roofs, like they weren't flat roofs. Like people would be laying on them. You know what I mean? Drinking and laying out, like it was a different situation. So yeah, it might just roll off. It'd be bad business. So
That is wild.
yeah. So I do want to talk a bit about our podcast, which right now is in a bit of a flux.
Mhm.
Um, but other than, I mean, the other podcast that we did with Archie, had you ever done podcasting before, or was this something new for you?
It was I like I said, I had done radio,
Sure.
but specifically podcasting, I hadn't done an actual foray into it. I've streamed on Twitch a few times, but it wasn't about anything real special. I was just boxing and like playing Madden.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but as far as actual podcasting, I had ideas of doing it, but I hadn't actually come up with either a topic that I wanted to do or just go about. And I've spoken to a few people about this already. It's just the thought of doing a podcast sounded almost overwhelming considering
Sure.
I do so much.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that I mean we shout him out a lot on Roundtable Wrestling, but I shout him out every week on here too. I think that having someone like Tyler who handles all the editing, all the volume, all the switching of people from screen to screen, getting it uploaded, is super important. Like it makes it so that we just kind of have to show up and talk, which
Yeah.
is kind of what we want to do, you know? So um, that is that's to me anyway. That's kind of part of the reason why things are the way that they are right now. But I'm hoping that we can get back on the same page at some point. Either way, Roundtable Wrestling has been a really cool experience overall. The last 2 weeks have been kind of, but but aside from the last 2 weeks, man, I've had a pretty good time doing it, and I think that we had something special. And you know, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Just honestly, like,
Well, something that we ended up starting because we wanted to just enjoy talking to each other about something we're passionate about. And if you
yeah,
can tell, I mean, our conversations, there are things we're passionate about,
for sure, yeah,
and is what makes the world even matter at this point, like doing things that you like and doing things that you can feel excited
yeah,
to do. And I
yeah,
think I do like the podcast. I like doing it. I like taking the time to understand the business of pro wrestling, to keep up with things. I'm always looking for new things to talk about, making sure they're not from Sportskeeda, making sure
yes,
um, it's stuff that's entertaining and going there and you know having gone from three people to sometimes seven,
yeah.
just the
We
business
got
in itself
some,
is something
yeah,
that's just a difficult thing to do, like so many things will come up when it comes to dynamics. There are people that, they have their own opinions and they have their own rules and they have their own triggers and all of that stuff and trying to get all of those different minds to get to one thing and to keep on one thing can be difficult.
yeah, definitely,
But when it's done well, it's done well.
yeah,
And yeah, shout out to Tyler because he had done and continues to do very, very good things. And I still think it's a very entertaining podcast and
yeah,
very fun to do. And definitely check it out if you all have Spotify and YouTube. It's on YouTube as well.
yeah. And Tyler has a whole Patreon for Emmy Studios now, which is really cool. Get Tyler
Go
some
check
money.
that out.
Yeah, Tyler
I
needs some
don't
cash.
know much about Patreon actually. I actually don't know. I don't think
So
I've ever been on the
yeah,
site.
Patreon is basically like a thing where creators can go and they make exclusive content that you can't see anywhere else. And some Patreons have free levels where you can go on and get kind of a little taste of what they have. But it's a monthly subscription basis basically, and you can set the subscription for anything that you want. And then a lot of people attach a private Discord to their Patreon. So when you subscribe to their Patreon, you get to be in a Discord too, where you can talk to other fans of the creator. So it's a pretty neat idea, man. It's a good way to get creative people paid, just because it's hard to get paid as a creative person these days,
I will tell you that for free.
unfortunately. Yeah, absolutely,
Hey,
man.
well, listen to that.
So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to kind of obviously I wanted to get into the podcasting because that's part of what you do, but I also just wanted to kind of talk to the people a little bit because I think there's probably some crossover between this podcast and that one. If there is a little downtime with the podcast, there's just some stuff going on. But I still consider everyone who I did the podcast with a friend. Pablo, are you frozen, brother? Wow, dude, you can sit really still.
Yeah.
my God. I stopped talking because I thought for sure you were frozen. Your eyes weren't even moving, man. That
I
was
was,
nuts.
I was reading something. I
Oh
was
my
listening to you, but there was something that had come up.
God.
Um,
And we're going to leave that in because that was funny. I don't
yeah.
think you could take that out, dude. That was hilarious. I was like, what is happening right now? That's awesome.
Um, so have you heard, not to get you off of what you were talking about, but had you heard about what happened with Gene Hackman?
Um, there's suspected foul play. Like I know that him, his wife, and his dog were found dead. There's no evidence of any kind of gas leaks. So the
And the
police,
dog.
yeah, and the dog. So the police think that someone went in there and killed him and his wife and his dog, or that one of them did it. Like they haven't really released anything yet. But
Like a double deletion? Is that what we're
yeah,
talking about?
yeah. But it was not. Apparently, it was not natural, obviously, or like a gas leak or something along those lines.
Well, because when I
So
heard about it yesterday, my father sent me a text saying R.I.P. Lex Luthor.
yeah, yeah. That was my
I
first
was
thought.
like, I was like, he's not talking about. And then I looked it up. I was like, oh, okay.
Not
You know,
Jesse Eisenberg.
he was the Lex Luthor from
First ones
from.
with Christopher Reeves. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Michelle
when I heard
Trachtenberg
that,
passed away too, which is rough.
that's wild considering that she's not much older. She wasn't much older than me, and I remember her from
Yeah,
my entire childhood. She was in these movies, and like I always
I was
thought
a
she.
big fan, dude. I was a big fan. I love Buffy and Gossip Girl and Eurotrip. So that's like
Like
almost her whole career. You know what I mean? That's almost her whole
Euro
career.
Trip, yeah. I think she was
Eurotrip,
also Penny in Inspector Gadget.
right? And she was Harriet the Spy, which that's I was too old to be watching that, but I mean,
That was my
yeah,
time. That was my
yeah,
Harriet the Spy was my time. I remember seeing that
yeah.
in the theaters.
But basically, from the time she was a teenager, I've been a fan of hers, dude. So it's very and Eurotrip is one of my favorite movies. I was trying to explain to Tyler, who's still in his freaking 20s, what Scotty doesn't know is and stuff before we came on the air. Because he doesn't
Matt
know.
Damon's singing debut.
Yeah, man. It's not actually him though. It's a LA group called Luster, but
Oh yeah, of course, because he doesn't sound that good.
he
Let's be
doesn't
honest.
sing. Yeah. But yeah, it's been wild couple days, man. Like
These are not hash brownies. This is a simple Dutch bakery.
it's so good. Or you worst twins ever.
You made out with your sister. Shut up.
Such, such a good movie, dude. Oh my god, I love it. Yeah, but rest in peace to both of them. I really Gene Hackman was 95, so like if
Then I
it
got
do-
scared because I was like, okay, it makes sense that you know, she was with him when he died, and then they said, wait, she also died. And then I
and
was
they're
like, oh, both older? It was like, no, she was 67, he
60.
was 95.
Yeah,
And I was like, oh, now something sounds weird. And then they
right.
told me, I think, yeah, to just told me that the dog died. And I was like,
Yeah,
okay, that
yeah,
something
yeah.
seems strange. But
If
did they
it's
find
not,
it? Did they see any like a sign of struggle or a sign
they
of
haven't released anything
borderline?
like that. All they've said is that there was no signs that it's gas related or natural. So my thought would be, I mean, he's 95. Uh, maybe he got. I mean, this is just speculation, obviously, but maybe he found out he doesn't have much time left, and one of them made the decision. You know, but
That's it. I'm not gonna lie, that's exactly what I thought the first time I heard it. But
yeah,
then part of me didn't want to think that because I was like, but she was much
she was.
younger,
Yeah,
had a lot more, like where was that money going?
right,
Was
right.
there
Yeah, and
no
maybe there could be something even worse than that. You know what I'm saying? It could be even. Yeah,
nefarious?
yeah. I guess we'll find out over the next few months. But
Sad to hear. It was
yeah,
a
for sure.
legend.
Absolutely, man. So, any closing thoughts? Where can we find you? What are you? Where's your food truck parked? Let's if people are in the Minneapolis area. Um,
Yep, if you're in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, you can check out my food truck, Brick Oven Bus. You can check us out at our .com, and we're usually traveling somewhere. somewhere in the Twin Cities area. We travel as far out as like Stillwater, and we'll go an hour and a half. We do grad parties, weddings. I'll be the black guy singing Sinatra on one of them.
It's awesome.
And
Awesome.
otherwise, I do plan on showing some of my poetry performances, possibly putting them on YouTube, and otherwise traveling around, singing, dancing, boxing, just being me. I'm gonna trans transfer myself into living more of a mobile lifestyle soon.
Oh, awesome. I've
Considering
always
that,
wanted to do
I
that.
don't. I think it'll be nice. I have not seen much of the world, and the reason why I moved to Minnesota and moved to LA and moved to all these places because I didn't just want to be living in the Bronx my whole life like my father. I wanted to see the
Yeah,
world. Obviously
yeah,
New York is the greatest place on earth, and there is a lot more places to see on earth.
yeah, for sure.
And
Australia, man. I
exactly,
want,
there's so
I want
many
to go to
places.
Australia so bad.
I don't even have a passport.
Yeah, yeah.
That's because you
I've
never
never
need a
even been,
passport to go to
never
Puerto
even been
Rico.
to Canada, dude. As sad as that is, never even been to Canada.
Yeah, I
But
can. I'm so close.
yeah,
I'm a Scorsese movie away from Canada.
yeah, dude. I literally could have walked to Canada when I lived in Buffalo, and I,
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
I when I
never
was at
did.
Niagara Falls.
Yeah, but so I don't generally like to do this, but we have such a huge march coming up, and everyone is on the calendar. So let's hope that this gives that this is, does not
Mhm.
uh, curse the next month. But we've got Evan Ginsberg, our first return guest, coming on March 3rd, I believe, is the first Thursday or first, yeah. We'll be recording March 3rd, but then it'll be on that Tuesday. So I'm not going to give dates. It'll be you know the first Tuesday in March. Evan Ginsberg, he recently wrote a new book, and he's coming on to discuss that. I'm going to read it between now and then, so I'm pretty psyched. He was a really great guest. Mark Knight, the original guitarist for my favorite band in high school, Bang Tango, is going to be on the podcast. Um,
Nice.
Gerald Collier, the guitar player and singer for former MCA recording artist, um, Best Kissers in the World, who, in my opinion, had the potential to be the biggest power pop band of the 90s, but they just didn't get the record label support. And we're going to talk about stuff like that, the record business, the amazing music that they made. And then today, I booked Dave D-Bone Alvin of White Trash, who had a similar experience to the Best Kissers, except they were like a really cool funk hard rock band that had a hit called Apple Pie that actually charted on mainstream rock and was played on mainstream rock radio and was in heavy rotation on MTV. And then things just kind of fell apart, man. But he's still making music and he's still out there. And White Trash is on hiatus right now, but they just put an album out last year. So we're going to talk to Dave Alvin too. Um, I think March is going to be a huge month for us, and I'm super excited to to do these interviews and present them to you guys. So keep on tuning in, man. And we're planning on doing a watch along for Elimination Chamber. And it'll still probably be on the Roundtable Wrestling YouTube. And hopefully Roundtable Wrestling will keep going in some form or another. We got to talk. But yeah. Pablo Aquino, thank you so much, my friend. This has been fun, dude. It's been a good time talking to you.
Yeah, and I appreciate, as somebody who's interviewed people, I appreciate the questions, and
That's right.
it's always a good time. We know each other, so I
Yeah,
knew for the fact that we wouldn't have an issue having a conversation because we do for upwards of 3 to 4 hours sometimes.
yeah, man. It's wild. Um, and as always, we already thanked him earlier, but let's thank once again Tyler Martin, Emmy Studios. Thank you so much, Tyler. Check out the Patreons, check out the Spotifys, check out the YouTubes. It'll all be up on your screen. or in the comments. And yeah, man, everybody have a great week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and please tune in next week and all next month for a really special month of Most Excellent Entertainment.